So welcome to our discussion for today. I know lots of you have been thinking about your PMP exam strategy, and I know a lot of you realize you are not going to do this in 2020. That's okay. I wanted to go over some content with you today about some of the things I think you should do before jumping into the prep for that exam. So what I'm going to do here is whiteboard a few things and go through once again that PMP exam content outline that we went through yesterday. We're going to take a look at how the exam is broken out very quick, but then we're going to go into people. And I just want to give you a tour of the people piece and give you some ideas about how you should be thinking about the exam. So why don't we, first of all, go into the content outline from yesterday. I realized that while I was sharing the outline, it didn't all appear on the screen. So let's hope we can see the outline here. And this is the outline for the new exam. You do not want to mix this up with the outline for the 2020 ending exam. The exam ended on the 31st of December 2020. This is for the new exam. So the content outline is a document that intimates the student with what they need to do from a pragmatic standpoint before taking the exam. So you want to get into the mindset of what should I be able to do as a project manager when it comes to people, when it comes to process, when it comes to business. Scrolling down, we have domains, people, process, business. We have task statements, and then we have enablers. So this is the people piece. You can see all the tasks there. We're going to go over all of these tasks at a high level today, just for the people piece. And then next week, we will go over the process piece again at a high level because you need to know where you're going first. And then we will go into the business piece the week after, when Thanksgiving is all said and done. We will go into this piece over here. Okay, but for today, we are going to be talking about the people piece. So again, I want to say welcome to my friends on YouTube. I know some of you have realized it's not going to happen 2020, and that's okay. If you are taking the exam in 2021, as I said in the last session, you need to be going to the website, projectmanagementmasterclass.com. And in the next few weeks, we will be making available the full-blown course. This is just the preamble. Yesterday, I know it was a bit of a long session. It was 2 hours plus. And if you actually didn't get to the middle of it, you would have missed a lot more juice because we have another 2 hours somewhere in the middle of the whole thing. So yesterday was almost going to 5 hours of training on that video. If you have not watched it, I want to advise you to do that. I'll try and put a link below this one eventually so that you can find that video. But I'm going to open up live chat. So if you have any questions for me about the state of the current exam, what is going to happen in 2021, or maybe you're taking the exam in 2021, feel free to chat in the comments. Now, I may not see them immediately, but I will get to them, okay? But for now, let's jump straight into a very quick overview of the content outline, a few things I want to tell you about this. So regarding this content outline, sometimes the language is very redundant. And for that reason, I have cut out some of the language in the presentation I'll be showing you. But for the most part, task 1 is all about managing conflict. And yesterday we talked about that in quite a bit of detail. Task 2 is about leading a team. So what is leadership? We're going to talk about that. Task 3 is supporting team performance. Task 4 is about empowering the team. Task 5 is all about training. Task 6 is all about building a team. And when I say training, I mean training your team so they can function on the project. Task 7 is all about impediment removal. An impediment being addressed as far as the team. We usually hear the word impediments when it comes to the Agile team or the Scrum team. We have task 8, negotiate project agreements. Task 9, collaborating with stakeholders. Task 10, building a shared understanding. Task 11, engaging and supporting virtual teams, very appropriate for what we're going through right now. Task 12, defining team ground rules. Task 13, mentor relevant stakeholders. And task 14, promote team performance through the application of emotional intelligence. And that will wrap up our review of the people piece. But it's quite dense. So what I'm going to show you today is the top of the waves. It is by no means the be all end all of the prep. This is just a tip of the iceberg. You must remember that we have a full-blown 35-hour course that is going to be presented next year. We've actually already had the course, we've held the course, but all the artifacts from it, the video, the course itself, that will be part of the Project Management Masterclass.com course that those of you signing up for will be able to experience. All right, so why don't we go over to our presentation. PMP 2021 exam. So the PMP 2021 exam, as I just showed you, is made up of various components. And we're going to take a look at the very first component, the very first task. It's important that while having a focus on the PMBOK guide, the Project Management Body of Knowledge guide, you must have a parallel focus on the tasks. And I need you to be able to get into the tasks mentally and to see how the tasks correlate to every relevant process. And that's what we're doing today. All right. So let's take a look at the first one here. Here we have task 1, manage conflict. Yesterday, I told you all about conflict. We talked about it. We talked about the 5 ways you can address conflict. But what they're looking for from you here is for you to be able to find the source of the conflict, the stage of the conflict. How do you infer that? By understanding the 5 stages of team development: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning, understanding where most conflict comes from, understanding that it's not about personalities predominantly. Personalities is not the number one place that conflict originates from. You need to remember that, and you need to get to the source of it. You need to be able to analyze the context of it, and you need to be able to evaluate or recommend the appropriate solution. One of the ways you do this primarily is through using your resource management plan, okay? Your resource management plan is an important document, and we know that this comes from resource management, but it has inside it ways you do things with a team. We also have the team charter right here. The team charter is that document that has ground rules, do's and don'ts, acceptable behavior, non-acceptable behavior. When you understand what is available in these documents, you can better answer questions on this exam. Now, I know they're moving away from very heavy ITTO, but nonetheless, you're still going to face PMBOK Guide 6th edition speak. Let me make it very, very clear. Those of you taking the exam from 2nd of January 2021, you still need to be focusing on this. Forget about the story, oh, 7th edition is coming out. No, it's not coming out on the 2nd. Your exam is still going to be based on this for a sufficiently substantial amount of time, probably 6 months is my guess. I doubt that they're going to abandon ship halfway or 3/4 of the way or quarter of the way. I think we might even see that the exam begins to change after Q2. That's my suspicion. It's not going to be Q1. I don't think it's going to be beginning of Q2, probably after Q2. That's my guess. But whatever the case, you want to make sure you're studying the right PMBOK guide. And the summary of it is 2nd of January, you still need to be focusing on that PMBOK guide, okay? So that is task 1 All right. And yesterday we talked about conflict, right? We talked about those approaches that you have for conflict. I'm not sure if you remember any of them, but I gave you a little quiz at the end, remember? And we talked about things such as compromise, reconcile, smooth, or accommodate. We talked about withdraw or avoid. We talked about force or direct. You remember? And we talked about collaborate or problem solve. Remember that? And we also talked about the Thomas Kilmann model. I showed you that model and we talked about different perspectives that people have towards conflict, remember? And it was quite a robust discussion we had yesterday. So that's pretty much it for now. You do need to understand these options, but most importantly, yesterday I mentioned that in an agile setting, it's really all about understanding the team needs to feel comfortable, the team needs to feel open to discuss with their peers, and it's all right to let your guard down. Be in a vulnerable position, it's okay because no one's going to hurt you, no one's going to hit you. Everyone is in a safe space, okay? So that's task one. Any questions about task one? Anybody got any questions on our friends on YouTube? I don't see any questions. All right, let's move on. So let's go to the very next one. The very next one is task two. Let's go to task two. And task two is all about leading the team. John Maxwell has a quote. He says, the true measure of leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And when you are leading a team, if you're not influencing, you're not really leading. However you get that influence, however you influence, whether it is directly from you or whether it is influenced through another authority figure, or however you leverage that influence is critical, it's key. But you also need to remember in the world of Agile, we do not look at the project manager as managing people. We don't look at the project manager as forcing people, right? We look at the team as being a self-organizing team. It's very important to remember this because there are various aspects of leading a team, all right? So let's separate leadership from management right here, okay? When you're leading a team, it's all about the people piece. It's all about the interactions, people and interactions over processes and tools. You got to remember that. So managing a team is more about the administrative pieces. You know, leadership is more about the vision, the mission. Management is more about the direct management of the structure of the team administration, positional power, things such as that. Now, we're not saying management is bad. Management is necessary, even in the agile space. There's some management and administration. But in this world of agile, remember the exam is going to be 50-50. I want to sensitize you that you have to focus more on leadership. And that is why task two is really about just that. It's not just about leadership in the traditional sense of having senior people in the firm who are leaders. It's also about natural leadership within the team. And there will be leadership even within the team. Okay? Natural leadership is not bad. So let's talk about the organizational form of leadership where we're setting vision and mission. So it's very important for us to set a clear vision and mission. Why? Because team members need to understand what exactly it's about. And as you can see, the first enabler is really about the vision and the mission. Team members need to understand, remember, we're focusing on the psychological and behavioral aspects more than just producing a product. So when you're dealing with people, they need to feel that they're part of something more than just churning out requirements, rank and file, robotic movements. No, no, no. We want people to feel part of what they're creating. We want them to become engaged. We want them to own it. We want them to feel like I'm part of something that's bigger than me. You know that feeling? Now, at times we talk about the project charter as being a document that authorizes the project. Again, the word authority. But we really want to focus on the project charter aspect less. And we want to focus about what we're building more than just looking at a charter. We want to get into the essence of it. We want to get into that psychological ownership. So we're trying to build behaviors out of this. It becomes very important. In the world of Agile and Scrum, we talk about the product owner. And the product owner is kind of leadership position. I took an exam from Ken Schwaber's company just yesterday, and one of the underlying themes was the value officer, if you will, or the chief value officer, to coin a phrase. That's what the product owner is. So it is a kind of leadership position, but even in those leadership positions, there's a lot that the product owner cannot do without liaising with the development team. See? So when we talk about leadership and vision and mission, the product owner, even from an agile perspective, really needs to understand what exactly does the business want and why. And that vision needs to be passed on to the development team. You know, people like to know why we're doing things, and knowing why we're doing things from that behavioral perspective, you get into making a connection with whoever you're building it for. See? So everyone wants to contribute, but I'm telling you, light bulbs get turned on even brighter when people know the why behind the why, when people understand the mission, the vision. Why does the doctor want that app? Why does the manager on the shop floor need that red button? Now, going over to the topic of diversity and inclusion, that is a given in today's environment. It's very loud and clear. So support diversity and inclusion is one of the topics that is espoused by the Agile movement as well. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion, you got to remember we're talking about all sorts of diversity, not just cultural backgrounds, not just race, not just religion, but what about how people think? What about how people act? Even right there in my classes, when I train this topic, I find people thinking differently about project management. I find people relating to project management differently, all from their own personal lens. So it's important that when we think about diversity and inclusion, whatever you're building could also have a bend to it, in that you need to consider that in what you're building. So think about diversity and inclusion from all aspects. Now imagine if you had a team, people from various backgrounds, various perspectives, different ideas. Those folks come together. That could generate some really healthy debate, some good discussion. So it's important to realize that we're all different. We have different skill sets. We put people building the product, people validating the product, people who understand the product, people who are probably going to use the product. By the time they begin talking and interacting, you're going to come up with a potpourri of perspectives. So the human aspect is really what this is focusing on. It's extremely important. Now, let's talk about servant leadership. When we talk about servant leadership, this takes away the edge of the draconian rule or the project manager lording it over people, because that draws you into the world of agile or hybrid, if you will. And I dare say the world where leadership should be. Because the concept of servant leadership is we want to change the role of leadership. Leadership in the past has been more management than leadership. It's been more of those things. In chapter 3, we talk about the things on the left of that table. Remember? Let me go to that page for you in chapter 3. There's a page here with a table on leadership versus management. It might be good for you to read that page actually. This is on page 64. If you look at page 64, you can see management, direct, use positional power, leadership, guide, influence, and collaborate. That is a perfect page to underscore what we're talking about here. But it's important that we move from that direct role into servant leadership. The servant leader says, what do you need from me? We want to have leaders that can say, this is where we're going. This is why we're doing it. And I need you to help us get there. What do you need from me to help you accomplish that? That's what the servant leader thinks. So when you're thinking about this area, my friends, it is important that even though we have some fun tools and techniques and processes up here, I am suspecting that in 2021, the bend is going to be towards the softer side. And that's why I'm focusing more on the agile components when it comes to vision, mission, and diversity and servant leadership and so on and so forth. That is not to say that the resource management plan, the team charter, the charter itself are not good pieces to look at. They're not bad pieces to look at, but as you're going into this exam, my friends, it is extremely important that you are very agile, focused, and aware. You always need to ask yourself, okay, what if I get a question that is agile oriented? Can I roll with it? Do I feel comfortable understanding how leadership works? Do I understand what the role of the product owner is? Do I understand what the role of the Scrum Master is? Now, I mean, you're not going to find that Scrum Master title, probably not on the exam very much, but it's code for servant leader. The Scrum Master is the servant leader. You got to remember that. Now, whether your title is project manager or whatever it might be, you still need to inspire, motivate, and influence the team. You need to analyze team members and stakeholders' influence, and you need to distinguish various options to lead a team and stakeholders. One of the ways you can also do this, and it's talked about in chapter 9, you got to remember rewards and recognition, rewarding the team and recognizing the team. All right, that's enough of that. Let's go to task 3. Let's talk about support team performance. So again, there are two perspectives to this. You can support team performance from the lens of the PMBOK mainline, as I've shown you in the past. Yesterday, we talked about the PMBOK mainline, and you can think about this from the perspective of the 49 processes, or you could think of this from an agile lens again. And you probably noticed that a lot of what I'm sharing with you has a very huge agile bend to it. And that's because in 2021, as I've said it several times, the PMI is moving away from largely predictive on your exam to a potpourri. It's a blend. And anyone who is not agile aware, I'll just tell you straight out, that person's going to suffer. That person's going to suffer. And the whole concept of a self-organizing team, we find it as looking strange to some people. Some people say, I don't understand. There should still be someone in charge. Well, hopefully you'll be able to take these ideas and begin to use them, because it is possible with a group of adults to have a self-organizing team. So you got to assume we're working with adults here, right? And then the same thing for supporting the team's performance. You expect the team to do their best, right? But then as a leader or servant leader, you should also support them and do your best to support them. And one of the ways you can support the team is, one, be quiet when no one needs whatever you have to say, and move out of the way and let the team do their job. Have you ever heard, let me get out of the way so that you can do your job? That's the mindset. That's the mindset. So regarding appraising team member performance, talking about key performance indicators, we have in the world of the PMI something known as team performance assessments. And you can see that on the screen right here. These team performance assessments are talked about in chapter 9. Now, in the world of Agile, we're not going to label it and say, oh, this is a team performance assessment. No, the team assesses itself. So the way we think about team performance assessments in the world of the 49 processes, and how management may assess the team, and management puts on the spectacles and looks down. Oh, that is bad performance. No, no, no. That is not how we need to think about this in the world of Agile, okay? In the world of Agile, we look at the team performance collectively. We're not looking to play the blame game. One of the other things we get from the 49 processes is enterprise environmental factors updates. And these EEF updates are really updates to underscore what individuals have gained in terms of skill. Skill records are updated and things such as that. So as a servant leader, as a scrum master, you want to help your team get to peak performance. And the topic of appraising team performance in the world of Agile, you want to see that from the team lens. The team can appraise itself in their retrospectives. All right. There are other ways you can gauge performance in terms of the amount of work done, whether you're making your velocity sustainable and things such as that. But we're talking more about recognizing team member growth and development. We want to support it, but we want to recognize it, and we want to reward appropriately. You also want to determine the appropriate feedback approach. And then you want to make sure that the team members have actually improved after development. It's not enough to send them for development. And that's why in the 49 processes, you got team performance assessments. The reason why you have them is to ensure your team really has improved. So in the world of Agile, we've got so many metrics. We could say, as far as the KPIs for human performance, we could look at HR, the HR department for that. It could also be looked at as part of management, because whether we like it or not, whether we're Agile, whether we're predictive, whether we're hybrid, we still have management. So we could look at this as a management thing. And there are many metrics, and there are many surveys, and the 360-degree surveys and attitudinal surveys. And the PMI talks about things such as that. All right. So those are some of the things that would be used in this task. All right, let's move on. Remember, this is the top of the waves. There's still a lot of stuff to talk about in the actual class. All right, let's move on. And now we're moving on to task 4. Let's go to task 4. So empower team members and stakeholders. And one of the ways you should begin to think about this is a self-organizing team in the world of Agile. But you also want to organize around team strengths. And when you organize around team strengths, what can you do? You can make them accountable. You can make them the approving authority for certain things. Remember the RACI chart. So you want to empower team members and stakeholders, but you want to do it intentionally using 1, a resource management plan, 2, a stakeholder engagement plan where it exists. 3, you also want to keep your eye on those work performance reports, because this is really code for managed team, where you are going to be doing some of this. Remember? So you're going to support team task accountability by empowering the team, by putting them in their strength zone, making sure that what they're working on, they're capable of. And then you want to determine the decision-making authorities to give them. Some folks, no, they're not ready. Other people, they were ready 10 years ago. Those folks, you want to determine how much authority to give them, and you want to give them decision-making authority. Okay. Now, like I said earlier, in the world of Agile, it works very differently, significantly differently. In fact, a lot of my students in our Agile classes, they ask the question, but how come there should still be a manager? And they think the Scrum Master means project manager. No, it's not. The Scrum Master is not a project manager because the project management responsibilities are different. Things like budgets and reporting and things like that, that's project managers. Scrum Masters don't do that. Some people think Scrum Masters are responsible for reporting. No, they're not. You know. Okay, so from the Agile perspective, it's pretty intuitive. Organizing around team strength first starts with intentional team member selection. We want to build teams of complementary skills. These people also have the right social skills to work together. There's such a thing as a bad fit, there's such a thing as a good fit, right? And then we want to empower the teams. We want to give them power. Make it a self-organizing team. Let them have the power. Let them organize the work. Let them decide how it's going to be done. We tend to have that go-to person mentality. No, we need to leave that. In this world of the new PMP exam, you don't be so latched onto, oh, it has to be one person in charge of the team. No, no, no. So for people who are managers, you got to back away and let the team figure stuff out for themselves, right? It's not as if you go into a black hole and cover up your head with a black cloth and acts like you can't see anything. No, no, no. You're still there. You still got the charts. You still got your boards. You still got your reports, but you back away, right? You can listen to the meetings. You can attend the sprint review if you're a manager, but just leave the team alone. Let them figure stuff out. And then you want to support team task accountability. Talking about accountability triggers accountability in a big way. The moment you bring up the big A word, accountability, everyone wakes up. Oh, who? Me? Am I the accountable person? So using things like a RACI chart is not a bad thing if you are in that predictive environment or hybrid environment. But you got to remember that these are people. People behave based on their psyche, right? They're humans and they're not machines. And it's also a trust thing. You got a trustworthy manager. Remember, we talk about theory X and Y. If you got a trustworthy manager, a theory Y manager, this is going to be a lot easier. You got a theory X manager, you're going to struggle with this all day long. All right. So again, there are two perspectives to a lot of what we're looking at. There's a world of the 49 processes and there's the world of Agile. Okay. All right, let's go on to task 5. Task 5, ensure team members and stakeholders are adequately trained. So again, it goes back to that mindset of, I've got a plan. I know who my resources are. I got to make sure they're trained. I got a plan for their training. And that's why I put the icon of training right there. That's training. But you also need to be aware of team performance assessments, because these team performance assessments, whether we're doing it implicitly and organically, or we're doing it explicitly through having a document that says, here's the assessment, we must get people the help they need. So we need to determine the competencies. We need to know the options for training. And then we need to allocate resources for it. We need to be active in our thinking. We need to get that person trained so they can function on the project. And then training outcomes can be measured. Let me just say, in the world of Agile, teams are not stupid, right? Group of people, each person knows who's pulling his or her weight. They know. Now, we're not doing it in a judgmental fashion, but there may be times when a discussion is needed at the team level in a retrospective or somewhere else, as far as who's pulling their weight and who isn't. So, everything comes from within the team, right? It's an organism that's doing everything for itself, right? So why do we need to look outside? Many a time we can actually train our people within the team. We can get a subject matter expert, someone who understands whatever needs to be trained really well and train their people. Let me show you this really quick, because a lot of times in the predictive world, we think about training being something that is outside of the team. But in the world of Agile, we want to think like this. We want to think like this. These are people. They have skills that are broad across a wide expanse, many different things they're able to do, many hats they're able to wear. But in these teams, there are people that don't only have broad skills, but they've got depth, they've got deep skills. And this is called T-shaped skills. And T-shaped skills are needed by teams in the world of Agile to be able to make it an organic learning process. And in that way, it even sticks more, it sticks far beyond. So when you go back to this task, and we're talking about determining training options based on training needs and allocating resources for training, the advice is for the team to first of all be introspective, look inwardly, like, thinking, why don't we work together on this? I'll teach you something new, you teach me something new, right? And then you've got a new team member that knows how it's done in the team organically. That's why we need T-shaped skills, broad and deep. So you got someone from finance who can wear a different hat. You got someone from engineering who can wear a different hat. You got someone who can test and code. You get what I'm saying? So those skills can be passed around the team. Another thing that we can use the skills marketplace for when we start talking about scaling techniques. You've heard about scaling Agile up or down. You have multiple teams working together on the same program or project or product, and there's more complexity. And as you have more teams working on one product, it becomes important for each team to understand the bigger picture, right? So what happens if you get team members speaking to themselves, collaborating with themselves, interacting with themselves at a higher level? You realize many a time that, oh, the team actually has that skill. It's just buried somewhere else in the wider team. You see, it might surprise you that there are a lot of people sitting there on the team with skills that can rescue another team or an adjacent team or a related team. So the skills marketplace and that metaphor, that idea of thinking is very important, right? Now, sometimes there'll be someone on the team who doesn't follow, makes accountability hard. Not everyone exhibits behaviors that are desirable, but as much as possible, we want people to be adults. This is where the world of Scrum and Agile is very different from the world of predictive. And to be quite honest, I'll just say straight ahead PMBOK, because there are many questions that point towards disciplinary action and such. But in the world of Agile, it's really more of the Scrum Master that should determine, oh, this is a behavior that is happening. So the Scrum Master, the summary is a Scrum Master needs to be able to determine and sniff things out, but also the Scrum Master needs to have great soft skills to have one-on-ones, one-on-one conversations with whoever the person is, where this person is generating bad vibes or bad work habits and things like that. The Scrum Master needs to say, hey, Phil, why don't we go for a cup of coffee? Let's go to Starbucks and talk a little bit. And that's where you discuss the challenge. So there are many things interwoven with this task. I know I've spent a little bit of time talking about this, but in the world of the new PMP exam, my friends, you cannot just think process in a mechanical fashion. I can tell you firsthand from my experience on the ACP exam, and I dare say that the trainers who have done the ACP exam, they have an edge when it comes to training PMP for this new world. They have an edge. And I dare say those who have taken the CSM, the PSM, CSP, all those other certifications, they have an edge. Why? Because they understand the human behavior that cuts across all. And I dare say those that may not even have the certifications, but they have worked Agile, they have practiced it, they know how it works. Those will be great resources to tap into. So if you're really looking, to go through this new exam, we have a very, very robust coverage of Agile. Our instructor Roy and we present a course on Agile basics. In fact, on agileprinciple.com, we have a course that's able to bring those that don't have any Agile knowledge up to speed. And we've heard from some of our students, they're like, I went to a CSM class and I didn't even need that much from it because what I learned from the class with Roy, it did it for me. And I can talk firsthand. Roy's also my coach in the world of Agile. So you come on the program, you can be rest assured we're not just it's not just going to be ramming 49 processes. No, no, no. 49 processes are good, but they're not going to help you enough. They're going to help you, but not enough for this new beast of an exam. I'm telling you, some crazy questions can definitely be expected. I mean, like what I experienced on my ACP exam, I'm not saying it was insurmountable or hard, but I was quite amazed at how they did not focus on the flavorings. They didn't focus on the flavorings of Agile. It's not about the TDD or about the Scrum or about the Crystal. No, they focused on the mindset. And it was very well done. It was a focus more on the manifesto, and the way the questions were posed was from a very heavily human perspective. And that is exactly what you can expect in 2021 on this exam. All right, enough said, let's move on. All right, that was task 5. Let's move on to the next task, task 6, building a team. So when you're building a team in the 49 processes, we have develop team, and that's where we talk about the 5 stages of team development: forming, storming, norming, performing, and adjourning. That has to be understood also in this context. One of the things that we do in the world of the 49 processes is we find out what these resource requirements are, as you can see there. And the resource requirements are really those requirements for the project. And then when you know your resource requirements, we also talk about the team assignments. Again, human, the team assignments. And then there's the running man, the training icon. We get the people trained. So it goes like this. We know our resource requirements. Then we acquire our resources and assign them. Then we get them trained. And then we shouldn't forget the wider team of stakeholders. See that? So the wider team of stakeholders is important when we're having this dialogue about building a team. And you do know that the wider team, you give your stakeholders certain responsibilities. I'm not talking about the world of Agile, I'm talking about in hybrid or predictive. So we need to appraise stakeholder skills. Many a time you can give a stakeholder a task to complete. Many a time they're on the RACI chart. We also need to deduce project resource requirements, like I showed you, using the resource management plan and following through the estimate activity resources process. And then you also want to continually assess and refresh team skills for the project. How do you do that? Team performance assessments. And then you want to maintain team and knowledge transfer. And when we talk about maintaining team and knowledge transfer, you do know that this is code for managed project knowledge, don't you? Manage project knowledge. And managed project knowledge, you know that this is where we get our LLR, our lessons learned register. And that lessons learned register becomes a conduit, a repository to help people. Eventually, the lessons learned register goes to an even bigger repository of information. It's going to become part of what we call a lessons learned repository. And that lessons learned repository is a repository of lessons learned across different projects and different endeavors. And all of this gets put into the repository. And the bigger picture of the repository is that it's actually part of your organizational process assets. All right. So with all this stuff I'm showing you, my friends, you can see that this exam is not going to be a cakewalk. You need to be, to borrow a term, agile in how you address. All right, let's take a few questions. I see some of our friends have chatted in a few things. Dev says, what PMI will provide? First of all, let me say hello to you, Dev, and I hope you're well. I appreciate you joining. I know it's late where you are, but let me ask you a question, Dev. Let me ask you a question. How is your preparation coming along, Dev? I need you to drop me a message and let me know you're going to kill this thing in 2020, because I know you're doing a good job and you're preparing. I hope you're finding the documents you need, but I'm kind of curious to know how you're doing. Jay Suresh Kumar, how you doing? Good to see you as well. Pradeep, good to see you. So let me take some of these questions from our friends here. So Dev says, what will PMI provide as material for people and businesses to attend the exam? Yeah, so the PMI has a new guide that they've been working. Now, you got to read my lips on this one. I'm not impressed. I've seen parts of it. It's already looking like it's got some errors in there. And I mean, Dev, you got a habit of getting me started, right? So I take a look at this thing, and I'm looking at process names and ITTO names, and it does not completely align. I just tell it like it is, because I'm a stickler for getting it right with the guide. If it ain't right, I call my students out. I'm looking at my goodness, this is from the PMI? This? They can't even keep their processes and ITTO straight. So looking at that, I'm not really impressed, but they've got all sorts of mechanisms they're going to be bringing out. They've got this new study guide. In my opinion, it's not really that great based on what I've seen. I'm not really that impressed. Going back to PMI's philosophy of days gone by, I think those days have long since gone. They're probably not going to come back. But the ideas of PMI back then was, we are not the be all end all. We can't teach everyone how to manage every single project all the time. Therefore, we will not call this best practices. We will call this good practices. And I'm like, that's kind of humble. That's good. And then they go further to say, and by the way, there are many books you can use to read for this exam. And they go to show you so many books and titles that you can use to prepare for the exam. I'm like, oh, wow. Okay, that's not bad. But now, out they come saying, we've got a course. Now, they're really in direct competition with the so-called registered education providers. So they've got their bells and whistles, they've got their fancy little courses online, and they've got, their own guide for the new exam. Honestly, look, I'm not going to be bothered with that. I'm going to focus on good old PMBOK guide. A lot of the information I've compiled from learning and experience. And by the way, other REPs have joined forces with me in the past to bring out content like that. And of course, the Agile Practice Guide. But I'm not going to be scuttling all over the place looking, oh, where's PMI's new guide? I'm not going to be doing that without apology. But for those who want to, for those who want to have the Jekyll and Hyde moment, oh, but the Agile Practice Guide says this, but PMI's study guide says this. For those who want to spend their time doing that, well, it's up to you. But let me tell you what will never fail, what will just succeed each and every time. Understanding the depth of what the PMI are talking about in these tasks. I'm telling you, let me be honest. If I had read the Agile Practice Guide for my ACP exam, and I had read all the books till the cows came home, without internalizing the essence of Agile, there's no way. Forget it. There's no way. There's no way. So I want to encourage you, if you're taking the exam 2021, don't think because you've got some fancy study guide, not the PMBOK guide. So, PMI is coming out with a manual. Don't think because you got the manual, it means you're going to get the essence. Because from what I've seen of the manual, I'm not very impressed. And I'm like, who on earth created this? Is this a PMP? That PMP needs to be put under the microscope because they obviously don't know the PMBOK guide. But anyway, enough said. Dev, you know how to get me started. No, don't do that again, Dev. Pradeep says, is the PMBOK guide version 6 also changing in 2021? So in 2021, you will have the 6th edition. Let me show it so that you're clear. Okay, are you listening, Pradeep? January 2nd, 2021, this is the PMBOK that you should be reading for the exam coming out 2nd of January 20. You won't even find the 7th edition because who knows when it will come out. So it's going to be this. Okay. All right. Dev says PMBOK 6 will be changed to 7, but expected in June 2021. I mean, it's promises, 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 promises. They promised us it would come out. And you know my view on the 7th edition. Don't get me started on that one. All right, let's move on. Pradeep says, so what I understand that until June 2021, PMP aspirants can refer to 6th edition. That is very correct, Pradeep. Very good. Thank you, Dev. All right. So Dev, you're on 60% mark. Good. Let's step it up. So Dev, look. Let's stop playing games, Dev. All right. How many mock exams do we have on that LMS? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. How many mock exams from PMI? One miserable one. I need you to take all six of them. So let me give you a target. I need you to take a mock exam every 3 days. All right. So you can take a 50-question mock, Dev, and I want you to report back to me. Let me know how well you did. Let me know your score. We got to propel you to get this thing. I need you to get certified this year, Dev. All right, let's do that. Let's do that. All right. Thank you very much for the questions. Let's move back into our tasks. We were taking a look at task 6, and now we're moving on to task 7. So we're just getting about halfway there. Let's go to task 7. All right, task 7. This is one of my favorites. And it's one of my favorites. You know, the reason is I truly believe that being hybridized is the way forward. Contrary to what a lot of people think, I think being hybridized is a way forward. Not being agile, blind, and just having predictive. No. That's not going to get you very far in this day and age. And not being so to the extreme of agile that everything predictive is cut off. No. Hybridized. You gotta be hybridized. You got to think. You got to use the Stacy complexity model ideas, right? Page 14. Let's go there. Page 14 in your agile practice guide. You got to remember the Stacy complexity model. That's what it is. I know PMI trying to coin it as something else. That's what it is, right? So we have low uncertainty, high uncertainty. When it comes to the technical degree of uncertainty, right? And then when it comes to requirements, we have low uncertainty and high uncertainty. What are we really saying here? So when we use the term low uncertainty, we mean certain. We mean more certain, like this. Low uncertainty just means certain. Certain as far as technical, certain as far as requirements. Now, if you are on a project and you are so far away from certainty, this is the zone right here where this is a zone where you have to think agile, because this is the chaos zone, right? But imagine you're down at this end where everything is so planned out, predictive. There is absolutely nothing wrong in being all the way down here, and there's nothing wrong with being somewhere in the middle, or more towards predictive, but not completely, such that you're agile ignorant. You get what I'm saying? So when we think about it, there are many places that you can be along a band of possibilities. And that is really what you need to understand with this new exam. No one is saying you have to be all agile or you have to be all predictive. No, you got to be hybridized. And that takes us to page 27 and takes us to page 28 in the Agile Practice Guide, okay? And that's what you need to be thinking of, because when you come to task 7, You got to understand this is agile language. And I coined a phrase, I call them IOBs. You got to be careful when you say that one. IOBs, impediments, obstacles, and blockers. So I believe that the exam is going to have a lot of IOBs, IOB questions, impediments. An impediment has been discovered. What do you do? Do you discuss it in the daily scrum? Do you take it outside the daily scrum? There's an obstacle that's been discovered. Now, in our traditional world, we would call that an issue, put it in the issue log and do all that stuff. But in the world of Agile, we use the term impediments. All right, let's go over to our Agile practice guide. I want to show you a few things about this terminology in here. So if you follow me to the glossary of the Agile practice guide, let's go there really quick. Page, or the index, page 161. What do you see when you look for impediments? Impediments defined, page 152. So this is a language that you can expect to find. An impediment is just something that impedes one of the team members or the team as a whole from getting to the sprint goal. That's an impediment. So page 153, or 152. All right, impediment. If it will appear, an obstacle that prevents the team from achieving its objectives, also known as a blocker. So as you get ready for this exam, you're going to find some terms that some of you may not be familiar with, but you just got to remember, okay, that's one of those things Phil talked about. It's an issue. It's a blocker. It's something that impedes the team. All right. So let's talk just a little bit more about these impediments. Okay. So an impediment in the world of traditional, we would say that is an issue. But in the world of Agile, we will say it is an impediment. And this is actually something that is another organizational or cultural thing that we should improve on, building a culture of removing impediments, being a roadblock remover. The team needs to be as effective as possible. And if we don't focus our time as servant leaders on removing the team's impediments, they are going to be impeded. That's the whole point of impediments, right? To impede. They block the way. So not only can we, as let's say we're Scrum Masters, do that, but even the team can help each other. The team can move those impediments. But there's some that are not removable by the team. And in that way, you need to connect people to people, right? You could run into this situation. Let's say the team discovers something and they're waiting for an answer, or something has slowed them down. The natural thing that happens in the traditional environments that we're in is we start doing something else. All right, I can't do this, I'm going to do something else. Well, instead, in the world of Agile, we want to encourage being aggressive, going after that impediment like tomorrow depends on it, like now depends on it. And if someone's not getting you an answer, go get an answer. Find the answer, do whatever you need to do to remove the impediment. So impediment resolution comes first before jumping to something new. Only go work something new if necessary. But your first instinct is going to be yank that impediment out of the way. That's the whole idea. Get rid of those horrible impediments. And that's what we want to do. Go after the impediments aggressively. Now, the person that we go to escalate issues to is not management. If you are in the development team, you go to your Scrum Master for escalation. They're the primary escalation point, right? And the reason for that is if we go to management, we might have to go to 3 different managers, 4 different managers, paper trails and all that jazz. But if the Scrum Master is helping you to do that, it takes the weight off the team so the team can focus on the more important things. So the primary job of the Scrum Master is to help the team have a great day. Buy them coffee, I don't know, buy them ice cream, make them happy. That's the job of the Scrum Master. See? So the concept here, without saying that it's a one-stop rule, it's not. There's, in the world of predictive, the ways we do things, issues, change logs, the change control board, yes, I know. But in the world of Agile, it is a different way of thinking. All right. So in the world of predictive, we'll probably have an issue, and then we'll have uh, a change request, and then it goes to change control board, and then the change control board blesses it, and then that allows us to remove whatever is really disturbing us. But it's different in the world of Agile. The way we talk about change requests, very finicky little change request that changes something, it's different. And that's why I'm telling you, trust me, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for anyone that has not been to Agile training. It's going to be hard on this new exam. It's going to be hard because the way we deal with resolving things that need to change, that need to be removed, in the world of Agile, it does not work the way it works in the world of predictive. All right, let's go back. I think you get the idea. Let's go over to task 8 here. Task 8, negotiate project agreements. Analyze the bounds of the negotiations for agreement, assess priorities, and determine ultimate objectives, verify objectives of the project, that the project agreement is met, participate in agreement negotiations, determine a negotiation strategy. So there's one thing that holds true in all of this, and the underlying philosophy is people, humans, and that customer collaboration. That needs to be our watchword. We need to collaborate. We need to collaborate with the customer. We need to collaborate. It's not just about negotiating, but it's really more about collaborating first. We're on the same team. You get it? We're together. We're a team. We're on the same team. When we talk about negotiations, it's a very wide subject. You know, we could talk about all manner of behaviors, good guy, bad guy, nibbling, and many different approaches to negotiating. But instead, for this task, we need to think more agilely. So what are we talking about here? When we talk about negotiation and agreements, we cannot do that without remembering the daily stand-up. And that's an opportunity for people to speak up, isn't it? Right? It's an opportunity for team members to raise their hands and tell the truth about whatever is blocking them. Now, some of these get down to the area of negotiating. Things you can negotiate acceptance criteria. You could negotiate schedules. You know, whenever we think about negotiating, it's important that we don't just think about money. We don't just think about procurement. But what are the things we could negotiate? Acceptance criteria, volume, what we're going to do within the sprint. We could prioritize. And in all of that, we want to be thinking collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. That's the watchword. See? Now here, I'm showing agreements because agreements, those could be verbal agreements. They could be MOUs, memorandums of understanding. They could be letters of intent, LOIs. It could be any kind of agreement. And that's really what this task is encapsulating, any kind of agreement, not just money, not just credit cards and money, but it has to do with negotiating anything. And I'm showing the interpersonal and team skills, people smiling there. Hopefully people can collaborate, have a good day while they do that. All right, let's move on. Number 9, collaborate with stakeholders. So first of all, let's talk about this one right here, right? This one right here is known as the power interest grid. The power interest grid has been a very helpful grid to project managers in that they can use it to assess their stakeholders. And one of the ways we do that is by putting labels on those: monitor, keep satisfied, manage, close, keep informed. That's still relevant. You just need to know when to switch based on the question. So there's actually nothing wrong in using a power interest grid. It's not anti-agile, right? It's just that we do things in a different way. in the world of Agile. Let's go on to this one. This is called a stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. It's part of your data representation that you use across stakeholder management. And this is where you take a look at where your stakeholder is. They're currently unaware, but you desire that they be supportive, or they're currently resistant, but you desire that they be supportive. So the question then becomes, Phil, my stakeholder, how do I get him from being unaware to being more supportive of the project? Or how do I get him from being so resistant? He's so opposed to this idea. How do we get him to be more supportive? That is what you would use this for. Now, in the context of this task, my friends, in collaborating with stakeholders, you want to ask yourself the question, what are the engagement needs that Phil has? Maybe Phil doesn't need all that you're throwing at him. Maybe we want him to be in a neutral position. That's fine. Maybe that's the engagement need we have for Phil. Just get him to neutral. Optimize alignment between stakeholder needs, expectations, and project objectives. Again, it boils down to this thinking when you're using the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix. How can I get Phil there? Build trust and influence stakeholders to accomplish project objectives. How do you do that? By having an intentional and solid stakeholder engagement plan based on the stakeholder engagement assessment matrix, which of course uses some information that you have gleaned from your power interest grid. So what is going to make this exam difficult for some people is being able to switch from Agile to hybrid, being able to switch from Agile to predictive and vice versa. All right, any questions about anything I've shared so far? Okay, no questions, let's move on. So we're on task 9, and we're talking about collaborating with stakeholders. Now, if you've read the Agile Manifesto, this will not come as a surprise, right? We all remember the main point. We are collaborating with stakeholders. What are the stakeholders engaged in? They're engaged with road mapping. So, in the PMP guide, we talk about vision casting, and we talk about a product roadmap and things like that. So they engage with visioning and mission statements and things like that. That's what they own, right? Our business partners, they own all those high-level artifacts. For those of you that have not opened it, though, let me just show you real quick. In the PMP guide, where this is, it's in chapter 6. And you'll find this under develop schedule somewhere. All right, so page 216. Why don't we read it? And I really want it to be clear, so let me get the PMP Guides mugshot. That's the version. And we're on page 216. It says, Agile release planning provides a high-level summary timeline of the release schedule, typically 3 to 6 months, based on that's a magic word, product roadmap and the product vision for the product's evolution. Agile release planning also determines the number of iterations or sprints in the release and allows the product owner and team to decide how much needs to be developed and how long it will take to have a releasable product based on business goals. So do you see where the topic of collaboration comes in? Right here. See? Agile release planning determines the number of iterations or sprints and allows the product owner and team. Now that is a massive code for a lot of collaboration. The product owner and the team, they're buddies. They do a lot of things hand in hand. Now, ultimately accountable for the value injection in the sprint is the product owner, but the product owner should not do things without the team being aware. So there's a lot of collaboration going on at the stakeholder level here. It says, since features represent value, you see the key word again, value to the customer, the timeline provides a more detailed, understood project schedule as it defines which feature will be available at the end of each iteration, which is exactly the depth of information the customer is looking for. See that? So right here, it's titled relationship between product vision, release planning, and iteration planning. And honestly, if you're taking the exam in 2021, you need to really have that page in your head and understand how that from the top level of the product breaks down into the features and how those break down into tasks and so on. All right, so we want to evaluate engagement needs for stakeholders one more time, optimize alignment, build trust. All right, let's go on to number 10. We're getting to the end of the cycle, so you can see this is really a cycle. You didn't know it was a matrix. You've been in a matrix, a PMP 2021 matrix. And we're getting towards the end. We just got a few more steps to go, and then we will be one and done with this high-level overview of just the people. Remember, this is just the people. And remember, this is just my high-level overview. Can you imagine what we have in the actual course? A boatload of stuff, my friends. That's why I tell you, if you're thinking of taking this exam, you got no business going anywhere else. In 2021, I want you to hit this page. Go hit this page in 2021, Project Management Masterclass.com. Hit that page in 2021. And if you're ready to take on the beast, come with us. We would love to have you as one of our students. All right, number 10, build shared understanding. So I want to talk about this from a couple of perspectives. First of all, this is all about problem solving. This is 8.2 in your PMBOK guide, right? Issue log, this is 4.3. The issue log is an output of direct and managed project work, as you know. And then it goes to all sorts of places. But these issues, whatever the issues are, they need to be resolved. And one of the ways we can resolve them is talked about in 8.2. And in 8.2, we call that problem solving. All right. So in 8.2, you've got the problem solving tool and technique. And we have the DIG-CIV approach here, DIG-CIV. What does that mean? D, define the problem. I, identify the root cause. G, generate alternatives. C, choose the best alternative. I, implement. And V, verify solution effectiveness. So when you're thinking about this task, my friends, I want you to be aware that there's a backstory to where the issues are logged. There's a backstory to how problem solving is done. So it says, break down the situation to identify the root cause of a misunderstanding. That misunderstanding, whether it's technical oriented or people oriented, there are tools, there are ways that it can be done. But of course, we know by now, obviously, through our discussion about Agile, that the overarching way of doing this is through using what? Collaboration, right? That's the shared understanding thing. So to have a shared understanding, it goes back to the previous task as well, because a lot of misunderstanding comes from when the vision is not well understood. It's very critical that we understand the vision. So again, we want to make sure that the vision is visible, it's understood, very similar to the project charter. So what I showed you in the PMBOK guide, or whether you have a project charter, in essence, it's the same thing. Where are we going with this product? How many sprints? How many iterations? How is it going to be broken down? All right, so we want to keep it very short, a page or two. We want to keep it simple. And that helps set goals and objectives, helps us understand what we're trying to accomplish. So we should do things that help get a shared understanding. And one of the ways we get a shared understanding in the traditional world is when we're building a lot of these artifacts. As we're building the artifacts, we want to bring in the stakeholders so that if we are going off course, we can understand very quick. Case in point, well-known pharmaceutical medical company, one of the giants, they call my buddy and I, Colin, in to help develop a work breakdown structure. And we had to guide them in doing that. But as we were guiding them, we were amazed at how they were amazed at the great ideas they all collectively had. Because it's one thing for people to have ideas individually, but when it all comes together and we all understand how the ideas interweave and presents the final vision that is what we are meant to get to, tremendous energy felt in the room. Massive light bulbs came on in Indiana that day when Colin and I were there. And we saw peers marveling at themselves because the light bulbs came on. Why did the light bulbs come on? Because there was a shared understanding, not just an isolated understanding of what I think the world is in my world, but what our world is. It was truly phenomenal. So what PMI is seeking for here is break down the situation, identify the root cause of anything. And one of the ways you do that is using your breakdown structures, whether it's a work breakdown structure, whether it's a risk breakdown structure, whether it's a, what do you call it, Ishikawa. Whatever the root cause is, get down to the bottom of it. People problem, technical problem, whatever. And then survey all necessary parties to reach consensus. Remember, we have plurality, unanimity, dictatorship. We're after unanimity. Support the outcome of the parties' agreement and investigate potential misunderstanding. So remember, you are an anchor person, right? Scrum master, project manager, you are an anchor person. All right, let's go over to our next one. Engage and support virtual teams. And more than ever before, this is so important for the environment that we're in, isn't it? Because of COVID, obviously. Because of COVID, everyone works in a different way. Either you don't go into the office, you work maybe more, you work, but a lot of virtual teams have come out of this whole crazy pandemic epidemic. It could be a challenge to some, right? Time zones, that was already a problem in and of itself, but now we've got people working from home, kids being homeschooled, crazy stuff happening. So anyway, you've got teams out 12 hours away and it can be a huge challenge. How do you engage them? You find ways of engaging them. Use the proper tools, collaboration tools. Like right now, we're doing this through Zoom. So webcams and cameras, right? And we all know a significant percentage of communication is visual, right? In fact, if you didn't know what Professor Emeritus Albert Morabian did at UCLA, it's probably time we talk about that, because this is where we talk about the concept of what my buddy Rick Brinkman, who wrote Dealing with People You Can't Stand, said. He says, I call it the 55, 38, 7. And what was Rick talking about when he said 55, 38, 7? Well, Dr. Rick was really talking about communications. And he says, to be a conscious communicator, you need to remember that 55% of the communication is body language. So if people cannot see your body language, they're missing out on 55% of the message. What can we do with that? Well, as a project manager, if people are unable to see you, maybe you don't want to turn on the camera, the webcam, the Zoom, just remember, you're sacrificing 55%. You're going to have to compensate for that in your tone of voice. And the tone of voice is 38% of the message. And you better be compensating for it big time with the words you select. So if there's no body language to demonstrate or convey empathy, wow, that's hard. You're going to have to do it all in this 38% and the 7. So it has to be really spot on and accurate. And that's why, my friends, when we talk about this task, engage and support virtual teams, your team needs to see you, project manager. Turn on that webcam. The team needs to see each other. That's why Zoom became so wildly popular. Wildly. Now, I'm not selling anything for Zoom, but I tell you, their stocks did go up. their stocks, their stock curve when COVID hit, it looks something like that. I kid you not. It was ridiculous. But why? Because people need to see people thrive on that. People thrive on that. So we need to engage and support virtual teams. We need to examine virtual team member needs. We need to do an assessment and analysis, environment, geography, culture, global, all that. We need to understand what the team member needs are. We need to investigate any alternatives as far as drawing the team in. They're virtual, but let's get them to synergize. Let's get them to collaborate. Let's get them to fuse together. I've seen this even with my class. The classes I train, when I bring the students together to collaborate, to have the cameras on, to be able to hear each other, the energy level goes up. It goes through the roof, far beyond anything I could achieve by showing them a bunch of slides or talking to them. The energy level just goes up. Why? Because we are humans. We like to collaborate. We like to interact. So having a virtual team is not an excuse for making communication lackluster. No, it needs to be right there front and center. All right. We need to implement options for virtual team member engagement, and we need to continually evaluate the effectiveness of the virtual team. So someone says, Phil, what are these strange things here? Well, let me go over them one by one. So this one right here, this is the icon for virtual teams. You got to remember, what's the task? Engage and support virtual teams. So I want you to think about virtual reality. Think about that icon. You'll never forget it. This one right here is really one from the resource management chapter, and it's co-location. You see, they're all in that same building. Now, while you are thinking about virtual teams, you also need to think about communication requirements. So your communication requirements analysis could come into play here, right? And you need to think about communication methods. And you need to think about communication models. So as follows: communication methods, communication models, communication requirements analysis, and co-location. All of them begin with the letter C. Very helpful. So going a step further, my friends, when you talk about the communication model, you got to remember that this sender-receiver model, sender-receiver model, is very important, not only in the communications chapter, but all across, even with the stakeholders. And we have a message, we have the feedback message. And then we have what we call noise. So just remember, you could have noise, what we call barriers, right? And these barriers, we need to be aware of them even when working with virtual teams. So how do you remove these barriers? What can we do to remove these communication blockers? Because whether you're communicating using email, whether you're communicating using the phone, whatever the method, right? Interactive push-pull, whatever the technology, you're going to find yourself faced with blockers. And that's what we're trying to minimize. We're trying to get those blockers out of the way so the team can effectively communicate and so that they can collaborate. All right, so we need to engage and support virtual teams in our communication. The next one is very similar. We've got an icon here for it, and the icon we've chosen is the icon for ground rules. Spade in the ground and a bunch of rules, yes, no, do's, don'ts, and communication methods. These are very important when we define team ground rules. So what PMI is talking about here, first of all, we have the resource management plan that guides us at a higher level of how the team is going to be developed and managed. And then we've got the team charter. And this is where the ground rules live. Ground rules live here. So all these little bitty pictures I'm showing you, it's not just to make the presentation look cool. These are important. So you've got your ground rules in the team charter. You also need to remember ground rules are a tool and technique in manage stakeholder engagement. Okay, you got to remember that. So just know where everything is and you'll be fine on your exam. All right. But going back to defining team ground rules, this is what we do as part of resource management and communicating organizational principles with team and external stakeholders, whether it's casting vision, whether it is sharing the vision of the company and how it works. That is something in the traditional world that project manager may be responsible for, HR may be responsible for. But in a project oriented firm, when you are in the world of predictive, you got to remember the project manager is largely either in a strong matrix. So when you're doing all of this as a project manager, rectify ground rule violations, you got to remember as well, even though you're in a strong matrix or project oriented organization, it still should have a heart of collaboration in it. All right. A PMI is trying to distance themselves, and they probably have, from draconian rule, right? They just need to demonstrate it. That's all. Ouch. Okay, let's move on to number 13. Okay, mentor relevant stakeholders. How do you mentor your relevant stakeholders? This is a very wide topic, my friends, a very wide topic. And there are a lot of methods when it comes to mentoring. And it's one of the areas that I find so important. And I want to spend a little bit more time on this. So bear with me as I bring up a presentation to talk a little bit more about mentoring relevant stakeholders. Let's go to a quick presentation. I'll try not to make it too laborious or laborious at all. So mentoring relevant stakeholders, if you take a look at the breakdown, right, you've got allocate time to mentoring and recognize and act on mentoring opportunities. So allocate time to mentoring opportunities and recognize and act on them. So what is mentoring? Mentoring is most often defined as a professional relationship in which an experienced person, that's the mentor, assists another, the mentee, in developing specific skills and knowledge that will enhance the less experienced person's professional and personal growth. So what does a mentor do? A mentor teaches the mentee about a specific issue. A mentor trains the mentee on a particular skill, facilitates the mentee's growth by sharing resources and networks, challenges the mentee to move forward beyond his or her comfort zone, creates a safe learning environment for taking risks, and focuses on the mentee's total development. It's very important to allocate time to do this. A lot of organizations don't. Some do it really well, but over the course of a project, it might be necessary for the PM or member of the team to act as a mentor to a stakeholder. Could be another team member, could be a stakeholder that's not in the immediate team. For example, an individual with control over project funding may not be well versed in the technical issues. Well, that could be a mentoring opportunity. The PM's objective should be to provide the stakeholder with enough information so that they can make educated decisions when needed. Consider the stakeholders involved in the work and establish a training or mentorship scenario if necessary. Mentorship can take many forms. Mentorship does not have to be so laborious. You know, like some management say, oh, well, that's going to take so much time, that's going to take so much effort. But just think about it. Management, if you're listening to the sound of my voice, what if you just had a one-on-one once a year? Now think about if you 10x that, a one-on-one 10 times a year. Do you know how much more value those people would bring to the firm? What about someone who says, Phil, we don't have money, we don't have time for that? Well, what about having a 1 on 20, a 1 on 30? Bring everyone to the room, bring the senior, knowledgeable person. You'll be amazed at the ton of information that you could gain, the ton of inspiration. I mean, we did this all the time in my company that I worked for, a gaming company. We had one of the big kahunas of the gaming industry, Joe. Joe had worked at EA. He had worked at every gaming company you could imagine. And Joe would come and give us stories. And honestly, the stories Joe told us, they would take you levels above where you could have ever imagined you would be. That's the power of mentoring. You got a big kahuna, someone who knows the industry backwards, forwards, inside out. All PMI is saying, all they're saying in this task is that you should mentor. Don't forget the mentoring clause. Allocate the time to mentoring, recognize and act on mentoring opportunities. That's all they're saying. All right, final one. Final task, promote team performance through the application of emotional intelligence. So promote team performance through the application of EI. And before we go any further, why don't we talk about what is EI? Well, talk about what is emotional intelligence. There are a number of mentions in the PMBOK guide. Let's go to resource management, the very beginnings, because I believe this is where, of course, the topic comes up first. Right there in the preamble to resource management, we have some language here. It's on page 310. Emotional intelligence, EI. It says the project manager should invest in personal EI by improving inbound, that is self-management and self-awareness, and outbound, that is relationship management competencies. Research suggests that the project team that succeed in developing team EI or become an emotionally competent group are more effective. Yes. Unlike a company I worked in, my manager did not have EI. Well, maybe he did, but he didn't show it. He got so mad with a stakeholder once, he took a glass container and flung it on the wall in the middle of the afternoon, and the sound reverberated all across the office, the little office there down Phoenix, and everyone's like looking out of the window. Are we okay? Apparently, he had anger issues. He could not control his emotions, let alone the emotions of others. And that was a very bad example for other team members because they followed suit. And a few weeks later, as he was raining abuse and lecturing one of my team members, that team member stood up. And honestly, the height differential was quite significant because you can imagine someone who's maybe like 5'2" and someone who's like 6'4". So when she stood up and looked down at him and said, "Now watch it, mister," that was not a very good example of EI in action, was it? Because he had developed bad behaviors that were now being copied. If it's okay for you to get mad at a stakeholder, your subordinate, can get mad at you. So what PMI is saying is the project manager should have control over his or her emotions, and the team should have that group collective EI. And that's what the PMI is trying to say here. It's a very important task. So promote team performance through the application of EI, emotional intelligence. It says research suggests that project teams that succeed in developing team EI become an emotionally competent group and they're more effective. Additionally, there is a reduction in staff turnover. All right, so as you're getting ready for this exam in 2021, my friends, you also want to be aware of all the places certain keywords like this right here is a keyword, right? So when you're studying these tasks for your exam, you got to go all the way. You got to follow it all the way down that rabbit trail by going to the glossary. So let's go to the glossary and look at EI here in the glossary. This is on page 705 in the PMBOK guide, and it reads, the ability to identify, assess, and manage the personal emotions of oneself and other people, as well as the collective emotions of groups of people. Have you ever experienced that? That if you've been a leader, you've been there. If you've led, you've been there. If you've led big groups, big teams, you've been there. You feel the energy of the group either change in the negative direction, like really sour. You feel it. You just feel it. Or you feel it go up a notch. That's emotional intelligence. You are aware. So it's not just individuals, but even groups, and you feel it. And that is exactly what they're trying to tell you. Let's take a look at the other mention of EI. Let's go to the index. And honestly, this is what you should do all day, my friends. If you're getting ready for this exam in 2021, you want to check all the places that these references are made. Let's take a look at emotional intelligence, page 349. So there's another mention on page 349. Let's go to it. All right, emotional intelligence. This is on page 349 under manage team. All right, it says emotional intelligence is the ability to identify, assess, and manage the personal emotions of oneself, me first, and then other people, as well as the collective emotions of groups of people. The team can use emotional intelligence to reduce tension and increase cooperation by identifying, assessing, and controlling the sentiments of project team members. Now, we got to be careful with that word. I don't like that word. At PMI, I don't like that word controlling because, remember the agreement, 6th edition, we don't control people. That's why we said monitor communications and monitor stakeholder engagement. And we don't have control team. We have control physical resources. That's really what it is control resources. So you got to be careful with that word. That word didn't taste good. We don't control sentiments of people. No, no, no. We can influence, you see. We can influence. So I would tweak that a little bit. But anticipating their actions, acknowledging their concerns, and following up on their issues. And that is what EI is. And my friends, with that, let's take a look. That was a final one. We want to assess behavior. You need to be aware of indicators such as Myers-Briggs. And honestly, personality typing, I'm not a huge fan of it, but sometimes it has its place at a grander scheme. I don't want to get into all that controversy. But you're assessing behavior through the use of personality indicators, and you're analyzing personality indicators, and you're adjusting to the emotional needs of key project stakeholders. So I'm not saying that stuff isn't true, but you don't want to put people in a bucket and forget them there and never give them a chance of getting out. Oh, that's Phil. He's a type A. He'll always be a type A. That's what he is. He's always quarrelsome. He's always anal. No, 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 no. Don't do that. All right, my friends, we are at the point where we will take a look at one of our favorite documents for this exam, known as the PMP exam content outline, and that's it again. All right, you want to make sure you're reading the right content outline, and that's it. Okay, that's the right content outline. You can see it's mugshot, looks familiar. Make sure it says for January 2021 exam update. If it doesn't say that, you know it's not the right outline. You got to make sure it says it because they look very similar. They look very similar. All right, for those of you who are taking a new exam, but you've kind of dabbled into the old, that's okay. We have a cutover analysis that we have throughout the course. So, I mean, if you're coming on our course, you're coming along with us for the ride, there's actually a page at the beginning of every task in the course, similar to this. I'll show you right now. Let's see. Very similar to this. Here we go. This one right here. So you can see up here we have hang on a second. I don't think that worked. Let's do that again. Come back. All right, there we go. All right. So you can see we have up here the 2020 exam content outline, which is really now called the 2021. PMI have changed it. But this is the content outline for the 2021 exam. Let me make it very clear. This is for January 2nd, 2021 exam. Okay, but over here we have a statement for the old content outline. And some of you saw this cutover map that the PMI came out with. I don't know where that map is. It seems to have been yanked off the forefront of the PMP exam. But if you were involved, right, in taking the exam in 2020, and you want to cut over, we have at the beginning, like I said, of each task, a cut over map, similar to what I'm showing you. And that cut over map is just saying, all right, that's what it was before. This is what it is now. See that? Let me show you this in more detail. Here's another task, and let's clear it. So you can see the 2021 exam is this block over here. But if you wanted to trace back all of those tiny little enablers, you could trace them back to the chapter, down to the chapter. And sometimes we get even more elaborate with them like this. And you can see we have the enabler. And then we have all of this, but we have the alignment to the old content outline for those people who need it. All right. So the summary of all I'm saying, my friends, is you got to read this content outline. You got to know it good. And as I just showed you over the past 1 hour plus, this is just the people piece that we have gone over at a macro level. Trust me, there's a lot more detail where this came from. All right, a lot more detail. So this was a top of the waves. There's a lot more to do. All right, I hope this helped you, and I hope it added some value to those of you who are getting ready for the 2021 exam. Any questions, feel free to put them in the comments. No questions, I'll just say a massive, massive thank you to those of you who joined. And I look forward to speaking to you, hopefully soon. But don't forget, like I said in the very beginning, if you're taking that exam in 2021, you need to go there on December 31st, all right? December 31st, go to the website. I'll put it here one more time for good measure because I know some of you missed it. The website is Project Management Masterclass.com. All right, Project Management Masterclass is where you're going to have the training to prepare you. And this is not just training for your PMP exam. This is going to be training across the board of project management. All right, so Roy has a very robust curriculum in Agile. It's so robust, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable because we had one of our students who had gone for the CSM class and said, Phil, can't believe how effective that class was. I didn't even need to concentrate that hard on my CSM. It was so easy based on all the things that we learned. All right, so we're going to have a very robust covering of project management training. All right, so there's going to be project management training for Agile and predictive. All right, what are some of the things we're going to be learning there? We're going to be learning all about Agile. We're going to have a big focus on Scrum, some focus on Kanban. We're going to focus very heavily on the practical aspects of the PMBOK guide. So when I say practical aspects of the PMBOK guide, we're going to be looking at the how-tos, how to, right? Build your WBS, build your schedule. And we're talking about practical tools. We'll look at Microsoft Project. For those who don't have a subscription of Project, we'll use other tools. We'll use a tool for the WBS as well. In these classes, you will actually be developing these for yourself to anchor the understanding. You'll be building budgets. We'll be taking a closer look at some of the tools used in quality. We'll be taking a look at what exactly leadership is all about, deeper level leadership. We'll be taking a look at communications from a pragmatic standpoint. We'll also have a section there on risk management from a professional standpoint. So some of you who have been to our classes have already experienced this. We've built registers and plans, and we've populated risk registers, and we've done the analyses and all that. That is exactly what we'll be doing in this class. We'll take a look at some of the pragmatic aspects of procurement, and we'll take a look at stakeholder management as well. So it's going to be a power pack class for anyone who truly means business in getting certified or taking their career up a notch. Because honestly, let's be honest, there are a lot of people who have taken a PMP exam, who are certified. They've taken a PMP exam and they've got the certification, but they cannot practicalize or pragmatize any of these things. They're still lost. They're still nervous. They're still afraid. You cannot put them in the forefront of a PMO. Those people need to be in this training so that you're not just project manager in certificate, but you feel like, okay, I was foolish. I didn't read the PMBOK guide. I was dumb, but now I'm ready to understand how to do what I've taken an exam in. It sounds like going backwards, but I know a lot of people are there. So whether you're taking a PMP exam, or whether you have taken the exam and you're looking to improve and go up to the next level, this is absolutely for you. Okay.